morning. Welcome to Hawthorne Hill Homestead. It's Saturday, so it's a day to kind of catch up on indoor stuff, make some bread. I'm going to ferment some beets. So those two things I'm going to do today. So we just finished barn chores, and so it's a great time now to feed my sourdough. So I have one jar with the whole wheat, and it is nice. Just took it out of the fridge and it's got lots of bubbles and a great smell. And then this is my white sourdough, so it has a lighter lid. And the same thing, I'm going to discard the brown water on that and feed both of these. I always do a little bit, like an eighth of a cup of rye flour, organic rye flour. The sourdough loves the rye flour. I'll do whole wheat for the whole wheat one, a full quarter cup, and then I'll probably put a quarter cup of warm water and give them a little stir. So I put the 1/4 cup whole wheat flour and an eighth of a cup of the rye, and I'm putting in a full quarter cup of warm water, and then I'm going to stir that really well. You want it to be the consistency of a pancake batter is the best way that it was described to me. You don't want it runny. You don't want it too thick. It's not cookie dough, but pancake batter. And mix it really well with your sourdough. And then this will now, I have the elastic on right where it is, and I want that to be at least double before I start making bread. Okay, I'm gonna put that over there. Same for the white. And we'll kind of do the bread. I've been trying to do a video on bread making. I do a sourdough white and a sourdough whole wheat. And I find that on Saturdays, I'll tend to do either all four, 2 white, 2 whole wheat, or I'll do one of them. So today I'm just doing 2 sourdough whole wheat because I have 2 white sourdoughs already in the freezer. So I think that's all I'll do today, and then get ready to ferment some beans. So actually, I'll go out to the garden and grab a few beans. And the beans have really popped the last couple of weeks. The best way to pick them is you grab them and just pull them up. Sometimes you can grab whole bunches of them. Yeah, and just pull them up. And that way you won't pull them out of the ground. It's really easy to pull beans right out of the ground. I think I get enough beans. There's the flowers. So we're back. This is the sourdough. So it's a bit more than doubled where it was up to here. So I think it's nice and bubbly in there, lots and lots of bubbles. It's very stretchy and has a really nice fermented flavor. So I think that's adequate to start the bread with. So for this recipe, it makes 2 large loaves, and you can cook them in a Dutch oven with a lid if you want to, or into loaf pans, but it makes 2 nice large loaves. So the first thing you need is about 3 cups of hot water, just from the tap, non-chlorinated, and a tablespoon, a good tablespoon of salt. Put in a little bit of my wet tallow as a lard. Not much. It would be a couple of tablespoons at best. There. Okay. And when that's melted down a little bit, oh, and I'll put in a little bit. This time, I think I'll put in molasses. So about, a quarter of a cup of molasses. And that's your sugar to start your yeast with. In my 4-cup measuring thing, because this is a whole grain, I have about 2/3 of organic oatmeal and about 1/3 of a 7-grain cereal. And I will cover them with as much water as it takes to cover that. So I have about a cup of grains. It can be anything. It could be sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, poppy seeds, chia seeds, hemp, any kind of grain, oats, spelt, whatever. And I will take 1 cup of hot water from the tap, and just enough to cover this to there. It takes about 1 cup. It's just covered that, just to soften that. I'll stir it up, and I'll let that sit for 10 minutes while it softens those grains. And I'll mix the lard, the salt, and the molasses into this bowl. And let that cool a little before I add my sourdough starter. So we're going to add probably most of this. I'll use a clean spoon. There. So you only need to leave a little bit behind, and I'm going to make a new starter with that and pop it in the fridge. And I'll add my 1 cup of grains. That's oatmeal and a 7-grain cereal mix. Your first addition of flour is a whole wheat, and it's 2 cups. So how much white flour do you add? This is an unbleached organic white flour that I'm going to add next. We'll put in 3. Your dough will be slightly sticky, but not this sticky. So another cup, possibly 2. I would say it's a 6-cup recipe of white and 2 of whole wheat. Add the 5th cup. And I'm going to stir it for a little while. I'm going to try to develop those glutens. Stretch and fold every half an hour. Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like that consistency. It's still pretty tacky. My fingers are going to definitely stick to it, right? But I'm going to mix it for a while and develop those glutens. And if I'm finding it just a little too sticky as I'm blending it, I can add a little dusting to the top. But I won't be kneading it or touching it with my hands until the first rise with, and then I'll do a stretch and fold. And it's incredible how it changes over the next couple of hours as the air comes into it and it becomes less tacky and more stretchy. But you just have to be careful at this point you don't add too much flour. So it's pretty tacky. It's pretty tacky. And now I've wrung out a linen tea towel, and I'm going to drape that over it. And I'm going to leave that here for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. So the dough is much less sticky now after getting air into it. And so I really just kind of just fold it maybe 8 times. There. Now I'll put a little flour in that bowl, the bottom of that bowl. And I'm going to drop the dough back into there. I'll dust it with the smallest amount of flour because that's the sticky side now. Like that. So we'll cover it up with a warm cloth again, and I'll leave that for another 45 minutes or so, and we'll come back and stretch it again. So time for our third stretch and fold. You'll see that the dough now looks like it's starting to rise. There. Okay. Yep. So pick it up out of the bowl. And we'll fold and stretch about 8 times. We'll dust the bottom of the bowl again with some flour. And we'll have one more stretch and fold, and then it will go there. A little flour for the top, just to dust. There. So I like to do about 4 stretch and fold. So we've done, this is number 3, so there's one more. Okay. Another hour, we're going to fold and stretch. Then we're going to put it into 2 loaf pans and get it for its final rise for an hour and a half or whatever until the oven gets nice and hot for it. So the last stretch and fold finds us with a nice smooth batter now, or dough. Okay. And here's maybe where I'll cut it in half. Now I'm going to form both of them into their little loaves. And you kind of draw it towards you, and that kind of gives it a nice stretch on the surface. There. And that's one. And I put parchment paper in a loaf pan, and I'll plop it in there. So we'll let those sit for an hour on and get it nice and hot, and I'll preheat 2 additional loaf pans. So, and then I'll pop those into the preheated loaf pans and into the oven. 230 degrees Celsius, I'm sure that's 450 perhaps Fahrenheit for 30 to 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes if your oven runs a little cooler. And right now I'll just go out and feed the barn animals. It's supper time, and I'll be back. So to start your fermented beans, you just need to trim the tops where they come off of the plant, that end. And just trim them off. And your biggest one, you just want to make sure that it will fit in your jar, which would be fine. Otherwise, you'd need, if you're using a shorter jar, you'd need to trim off more. And in the bottom of your jars, put 2 teaspoons of salt in a 1/4 cup of water and mix well. I use a coarse pickling salt. Non-chlorinated water, a 1/4 cup. Get that to start dissolving while I finish cutting these beans. Give them a rinse. One's going to have garlic and one's going to have dill. So you're just going to peel. I'll put 2 cloves. One in the bottom and one at the top. Here's one sort of going to seed, and I'll put that on the bottom. Then you just start packing your jars. So you pack them till you really can't fit any more in. Okay. Nip off the tops if any are sticking up. Okay. There. I think that's the extent of what I can fit in here. Okay. Then you're going to fill up with water. So you fill up with water, and I have a little package of these wide mouth mason jar lids that I'll push on. Okay. Then I have these little pipette things that release gas. There. Okay. There. I'll give them a rinse, and we'll put them in a dark cupboard somewhere and let them sit for 2 to 4 days. They should be fermented. You can taste one, and then you put a proper lid on and put them in the fridge. They're really good, really tasty. We'll let them drain in the rack, then we'll put them away.